This last panel is supposed to sort of set the scene for tomorrow, and I want this panel to be a bit of a pub chat, you know, like four buddies sitting in the pub, shooting the shit about the industry. And
gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic. Here's a gin and tonic. So this was about the duopoly, but I tweeted today that I wouldn't talk about the duopoly, and I've spoken about them loads today. So I guess this panel I want to turn into something a bit more positive, because I was a can. It was great fun, by the way. Everybody should go if they get in their career. And it was a very negative experience this year. I don't know if any of you read the trade press here. Like, hands up who reads the trade press every day. Just put your hands up in the air. None of you read the trade press. Hands up who thinks that the trade press is overly negative about our industry. All right. Okay, good. That was 4 people. So my point is lost there. So this panel is to talk about the opportunity beyond the 2 big Silicon Valley behemoths, right? There's 101,000 opportunities in this space, and we want to talk about some of this. So I'm going to frame the conversation around 3 key events this year, right? I feel that 2018 is a fundamentally epoch-defining year for our industry, right? 3 events. And we're going to talk to them one by one, right? And we're going to go through those subjects. We're going to talk about them and how they affect the industry, right? First of all, GDPR, right? Not boring, but fundamentally transformational. And we're going to start with yourself. So we're going to do 1, and then I'm going to do 2, and then I'm going to do 3, right? And they're pretty good. Like, the other 2 are really good, right? Okay? So let's start at GDPR.
Were you at the pub before? Or were we just,
no,
like catch up?
I've just had a couple of whiskeys. I'm up for this panel.
I'm just jealous of enthusiasm. Firstly, it's been amazing to see how much this event has grown from 7 years ago when there was 40 people in a room in Sydney.
It wasn't 40. It was 80.
Oh, 80.
85.
Okay. I got my money's worth when I sponsored then as well.
Okay.
GDPR, good. Needed.
Yeah? Is that it?
We have to grow up, right? As an industry, it's easy from APAC to say it doesn't affect us, but I mean, all this is happening because we've had very bad habits of how we're engaging with consenting consumers. We haven't respected privacy, we haven't respected their mindset, and we haven't respected, how publishers and advertisers want to make and transact money. So it's a necessary evil.
A necessary evil.
Completely agree. I just think that the pain that we will be going through for the next 6, 12, 18 months, the investment that certainly every single business, ourselves included, in terms of the headspace, it's a bit like Y2K all over again, but actually with proper consequences, even though Y2K never really eventuated. I think I know we want to move on from the duopoly chat, but I think that the GDPR, in terms of some of the implications that it has at different parts of the food chain or supply chain with location-based services and not being able to sell those onto third-party networks and using that data, it's actually going to be destructive in terms of value for some businesses. Now, whether that's, to your point, the right thing to do for the bigger, wider agenda of, we've abused data in the past, therefore we need to clean up the system. I think in cleaning up the system, we're probably playing a little bit into Google and Facebook's hands anyway. So they'll get stronger. They'll get stronger in the short term.
I agree. But do you think that it's a great thing that's happened here? Like, because I've said it before, the user's almost been like a second thought for a lot of people in this industry. Like, I'll give you an example. When we were doing a GDPR audit on our site, we had ATS, who are owned by Oracle, and Discuss, which is an independent company. And we were doing our audit on the site using Ghostery, and we were looking at the cookie syncing that was going on our page. There was like 36 cookies syncing our page. All of our sponsors were there, but we didn't actually have any tags or advertise on the page. And I was like going, this is insane. So these companies were just basically selling our users without telling us. And that has to be a good thing, that we are now seeing this as a value add, right? We're saying to the consumer, look, we use cookies to make money, right? And this is how we make money. And you can opt in or you can opt out. So that's a good conversation to have, surely.
It is, from an advertiser perspective, whilst they'll agree that cleaning up the ecosystem is a massive positive, it will have an implication on the economics of the system. That if all of a sudden there's a heck of a lot less data, albeit getting rid of some bad data, it could mean that prices go up significantly, which from a media agency perspective, it's a really interesting conversation to have, given that we're guardians of advertiser budgets.
From the IBM perspective, this must be a good thing, because...
Actually, I'm not going to do IBM perspective.
Are you not?
That's okay. I'm a privacy lawyer by background. So
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. That wasn't set up at all.
I am a privacy lawyer. I have been for the last 17 years. So this for me was really interesting, seeing GDPR come in and all the talk around it. I think the first thing is, as you talked about, there were some bad players in the market that were not doing the right thing with data and not being transparent about how they were using it. But the majority of them weren't actually complying with the legislation that was in place anyway. So I know that there was this kind of reason for putting an extra layer of protection in there. But I do think we needed to start from a point that actually some of the practices weren't optimal anyway. Is it good? Possibly. I think it's good in that it's raised consumers' awareness around the whole privacy issue, whereas previously probably a lot of us didn't take an awful lot of notice of it. And I do think it's good from a transparency perspective. So we now all have to be much more transparent about what we're doing and explain in a much more clear way about what we're doing. But actually, when you look at, is this going to work and is it viable, there are some things in there that you just go, goodness me, this is going to be really hard to comply with. So as much as we're wanting to comply, and of course we all have to comply, it is really, really difficult. So something like this idea of the right to be forgotten, which sounds great in theory, you put that into practice, that's really difficult. So i.e., a consumer comes along to you and says, I want you to forget me, please. And you say, well, that's great, I will make sure that we suppress you on our database, and et cetera, et cetera. But that then passes on to every party to whom you have passed data to, and on from there. And if you look at our digital world, is that really going to be possible for us to do to the nth degree? And I don't know the answer to it, but I don't think it is possible. So I just think we've got to be a little bit careful with this. I think it's good, but I do think that the lawmakers have overplayed it, and I think it's going to cause us some real challenges to comply with it in the digital world we're in.
Okay, but...
Yes.
It does make us think about things differently. And this is where I feel this is an exciting period in our industry, right? Yeah. It makes us think about user monetization, right? The attention economy, right? I think that's quite exciting. I mean, we haven't really talked about blockchain today. I think we're talking about tomorrow, but blockchain is quite interesting because we could end up using that as a technology to sort of trade second-party data.
Mm-hmm.
So you need more tech for more tech?
Possibly, but look, the way that we monetize media at the minute is archaic, right? The way that we use data is being questionable, right? I agree with you that it's going to cause problems in the short term, and Google and Facebook will win. But ultimately, the exciting thing about this is that we, as an industry, are going to think about the internet in a completely different way, right? Like, it's the new start of decentralization of the web, right? You think about Facebook and Google's power is blunted. In the short term, they win, but in the long term, they will lose, which is the good thing. Do you agree?
I'm going to echo what a lot of the other panelists have said. I mean, the reality is, as brands realize that their own data and the data on their own customers that they can share with others in a mutually beneficial relationship is going to be one of the keys towards reducing the value that Facebook and Google offer, then we will see value coming out of GDPR. But what's my persistent identity if I don't have a cookie right now? We don't have it, right? I mean, certain platforms will claim they have it, but the reality is we're striving towards notions of being able to customize and semi-personalize our messages to individuals or groups of individuals. And if I don't know where that person is or how to address them, it fundamentally challenges what I need to do. So I think I'll agree that at the end state, we will see a dramatic change based upon what GDPR will create. But the reality is, in the short term, we're really going to struggle to do our day jobs, if you will, and actually not even do our day jobs, but do what a lot of us are talking about doing in the next 1 to 3 years. And my fear is that that pulls people back a bit. So, you know, I know this is a future panel and a forward-looking panel. I'm looking forward for 3 years, and then I'm looking forward for 5 years. And that 3-year period is where I'm a little more concerned.
Okay, so
Can I ask you a question?
you can ask. I was going to go on the subject. I was going to go on to number 2, but you can ask me a question.
When you said that the economics of the industry is archaic. Can you elaborate what you meant by that?
It'll take too long. I need a couple of beers. Yeah. So, item number 2, that's completely made this an epoch-changing year, right? The M&A trends around telco and media, right? So, we have had AT&T buy Time Warner. We have a proper shit fight between Comcast and Disney over the Fox assets in the US and the Sky assets in the UK and India and elsewhere. And obviously, the follow-on from that is now AT&T are going to buy AppNexus, which is pretty
allegedly.
It's pretty, dude. It's done. That deal is done. Done. I'm telling you that now. Take it from my word for it. It's been done since Brian Lesser moved there. So the knock-on effect for the industry is huge, right? This is an implication for duopoly, right? We suddenly have telcos buying media companies, consolidating media, just consolidating first-party data. That must be an exciting opportunity for the industry, surely. Take on the duopoly.
Well, I think it's the next generation of those who are going to survive and thrive in the next 10 years, or companies that have consent and scale, in some combination of the two. And that's what all these acquisitions really are, right? You're asking about a persistent ID. What's more persistent than my mobile phone? It's everywhere. It knows everything. It predicts what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now anyways. It's exciting, but it also means that it's harder for, since the VC money is starting to dry up, the chance of innovation may be slightly less for the short term.
That's true, but these companies need to buy ad tech stacks, so it's good for you, clearly.
It's again, some of us on stage have been around quite a while. It's no different to when I worked on Sony back in '99 when they went, right, we're a hardware business, we're going to get in the content business, let's buy Columbia TriStar. And then they went, actually, we now need to own the pipes between the two things. I think as a strategy, it's what telcos, when Sol Trujillo was running Telstra, he wanted it to be a media comms company. That I think it's the same strategy that's been attempted to be delivered over the last 20 years. The key difference now is with the ad tech and the data stack, they're able to actually bring it forward and actually properly target GDPR, notwithstanding.
But surely the rules have changed, right? So the big TV companies, the big telco companies, they're getting blunted by the Silicon Valley fangs of the world, right? So this creates urgency among this, and then creates a lot of interesting sort of. I expect copycat mergers to happen in Asia and Europe as well. So surely this is good for the ecosystem to have, you know, many players in the space as opposed to just two.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And the other thing I would add to this is, you know, we talk about telcos buying media companies. A telco is not a telco anymore. It's really a data company. And I think that's the shift. So the putting together of data and media is absolutely where it needs to be. And almost the telco bit is kind of off to the side now. And I guess you look at that with Telstra spinning off the telco bit of what they do, really kind of speaks to that.
And I think beyond that, it reinforces the value that premium and superior content has in the minds of these investment groups. Because the reality is there is so much, as we've talked about and everyone knows, demands upon a consumer's attention, that it is those critical and key moments, like the World Cup, when people do watch linear TV and they fundamentally change their behaviors. And that happens with when HBO runs Game of Thrones, and that happens with a lot of these other properties that are being snapped up because they do command people's attention at scale. And I think that's what a lot of marketers are still striving for. They're still striving to find these quintessential moments when I can speak to someone in real time, live, and there's a large number of them. And for broad-based marketers with low interest, that's vital.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. The last one's the last one is pretty controversial, so try and see it from what it is. Oh. The last third point, which is epoch-defining Martin Sorrell. Now you'll ask me why did I pull that rabbit out of the hat? I'll tell you why. It feels to me that he is a metaphor. His career arc, right, is a metaphor for the existing holding group model, and that we are about to move into a new age of service layer. So anyone want to pick that up? I'm not going to talk about his misdemeanors or that crack because who knows what happened, but it feels to me that is a big defining moment for the holding groups. Would you agree?
It is, but are we moving into a new new state. I mean, the first words out of everyone's mouth,
Rebate.
Who was going to buy WPP?
Rebate, sorry. WPP. Right.
Nice. Was the large A consultancy going to purchase them instantly and use themselves as their M&A partner? I think that there are a variety of paths that can be taken here, but the easiest path is for the holding company model to slightly evolve, for the owners and players in the short term to retain control over a system that generally works. It doesn't work well, and it's declining in terms of its effectiveness, as opposed to fundamentally blowing up the system. I mean, his first step was to recreate a new holding company, right? I mean, if that doesn't speak volumes about where his head's at in terms of where things are going, then I don't know what does.
Notwithstanding, I'm speaking on behalf of one of the holding companies.
This is not me saying.
No.
By the way, I, for the record, right, I have defended the holding groups. I have talked against in-housing, but I do think that an evolution process is necessary, right?
Yeah.
And Martin Sorrell was one of the vanguards. He's the father of the holding company. He's the guy who came up with it, right?
Actually, he's not.
Okay, he's
Local
not right. Okay,
Harper Marion who created
he's one of the first.
IPG in the
Jesus.
60s.
Okay, IPG, right?
Right.
But for him, it was a financial experiment, right? Leverage up, buy companies, buy revenue, right? That worked in old media. We're now in an age where data is premium, right? Where technology is premium. We have a convergence of ad tech and martech. We have a whole white area which is trying to be filled by consultancies, and holding groups are trying to fill it. So are we looking at a new beast, if you will, in the space?
I think to Silas's point, it's nuanced. I don't think the holding company model is broken. I think what it's demonstrated is that biggest doesn't mean best, and as you scale something, it becomes increasingly difficult for it to stay true to what you actually set it up for, whether it's horizontality, as Martin called it, or open architecture. Or, if fundamentally, holding companies are there to, if they don't operate in the best interest of a client, then they don't have a long-term future. So long as we're offering value to clients across, whether it's media, advertising technology, consumer insights, I think the two greatest things that still sit at the heart of a holding company is aggregated consumer insights, and increasingly that the aggregation of scale that has been used to get cheaper pricing of media is now just as valuable in terms of the way in which we work with technology partners to bring that to bear, so it's not purely a price equation. I think that's the nuance of how one of our erstwhile competitors will probably have to look to change.
Let the marketer speak there.
So I think, and I'm not sure if I'm right in this or not, I'm just thinking as I'm speaking, really. But I think one of the challenges with the holding group model has been that it hasn't always integrated well. So it's got all of the expertise, but hasn't necessarily brought that together so it's seamless for the marketer sitting on the other side of things. Whereas I think maybe the shift at the moment over to the consultancies is that there is a feeling that they are more integrated in that from a marketer's perspective, somebody is speaking to them about the whole kind of spectrum, rather than having different people coming at it from the different parts of the agency. So maybe the evolution is more the coordination of it, so it's feeling that it's a one experience for the marketer rather than a multiple experience.
I guess a leveraging of talent. I mean, that's what Marcel is from Publicis, right? You have an AI assistant. You talk to, he's like, find me an expert in Cambodia, and he'll find you the one, even if you're based in Uzbekistan. It's pretty amazing in theory. I think from our point of view as technology enablers, we're seeing agencies, maybe not the whole, but at least individual agencies try to question how they can reinvent themselves and make themselves relevant for the brands. And a lot of that, if every holding company is buying on leverage and position and using the same 3 tech DSPs to access the same 100 SSPs, what is their ultimate value if it can go in-house or not, right? So we're being asked now and having these high-level conversations, especially even in this region, of how do we make sure that when we're optimizing, when we're pitching, it's going to be actually relevant for each of our brands, so they don't want to leave us. It's hard to leave. We want to stay relevant. We actually want to make them have not clicks, but actually have people buy something. And we're trying to work to move away from that vanity metrics of clicks and that we probably have evangelized for too long, to take it to time spent, dwell time, things actually moving off shelves. And I think that's what the change is now that you're talking about.
Do you fear the consultancies? Not at all.
No, honestly, not at all.
Why? Good. Someone said last year they're great at presentations, or great at PowerPoint presentation, but not very good at execution.
I can't speak to their PowerPoint skills, but to Jodie's point about having all the right skill sets under the roof, but not necessarily making it easy, I think the consultants, and again, we talk about consultants in a bucket as if they're the same. Each of the big four have got very different strategies. Some have actually invested in businesses that then give them the ability to execute. Others are looking more at just the old school consulting advice and then bringing in partners. So,
But do you think that the new model? I know holding groups are still strong, right? But we now have a different conversation going on with brands, particularly around the MarTech piece, right? Well, how can I integrate a DMP? Do I need a DMP? How do I integrate a CDP? What do I do with all this data? There's offline, online data, and I know you're having those conversations already, but it feels to me that there's kind of a space there for a new entity, right? I'm not sure what it looks like. Maybe it's based on execution, based on capabilities, but the current holding group model, particularly on the FTE model, right? And I know that Dentsu made a big acquisition for a AdOps outsourcing company. I don't even know that's public, but they bought them for tens of millions. It is now. But they basically downsizing the back office, right? So do you think that the holding groups will have to go through that process of sort of reorging their business? I know that some are already thinking of that, but others are more ahead in terms of the transformation, particularly publicists who've been doing doubling down on the whole consultancy piece. But do you think there's a new model here potentially going to emerge? And I'm not picking on you, by the way, but you're the only agents person.
No, that's right. Look, at the heart of what consultants do is offer advice. Equally, I don't think that agency groups or holding companies don't not offer advice. I think it's not you get one thing from one and something completely different from another. So have the agencies had to upskill around areas of the latest set of buzzwords around CX and digital transformation, and as we rapidly run into the world of e-commerce? Absolutely. But that's not a unique skill set to consultants or to agencies.
I would just build on that by suggesting that consultants have done a great job of, one, making senior management understand their value quickly. Not necessarily in the space that we're referring to, but generally in terms of business consulting. And what that's done is it's allowed people who work inside a brand to have a shortcut, if you will, to driving internal change in the space of ad tech and MarTech or digital strategy or digital transformation. The other side is they're very adept at sitting above any individual agency's area of working. So IPG may be a brilliant media agency, but you're going to struggle to find CRM specialists there or any other media agency, or anyone that can talk about the customer from a holistic perspective. And we can debate whether or not the big consultancies can do that effectively, but they've at least positioned themselves to talk about the business implications of understanding the customer and have sold that into big clients.
So I think we've run out of time, but I want to talk about the three things again. So we have GDPR, which is transformational. We have the mega M&A activity, which is transformational. And we have the Martin Sorrell thing, which is transformational. So based on those three things, do you think we can live outside the duopoly? I know that's kind of a random question, but so one word, yes or no, based on that random conversation we've had for 30 minutes.
Fine, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for a fantastic panel.